The top business stories live from the Sky Newsroom. Donald Trump's trade plans in turmoil as a US court rules that his Liberation Day tariffs are illegal. The world's richest man, Elon Musk, ends his role in the Trump administration but says that Doge will continue. Plus, the British flying taxi developer making aviation history in the Cotswolds. Very good afternoon. On this Thursday, Business Live with me, Darren McCaffrey. Well, Donald Trump's biggest economic policy has been dealt a major blow with a trade court blocking his global tariffs on imports. The US president has argued that he brought in the levies because it was a national emergency. But a panel of judges has ruled that he's overstepped his presidential power and that the tariffs themselves are illegal. Let's speak to Irene Tunkel, who's chief US equity strategist at BCA Research. Irene, good afternoon to you. Donald Trump is clearly going to appeal this decision, but it is having wide-reaching consequences already.
Yeah, no, this was a big decision, but I think that the market reaction is muted because the market is kind of counting on appeals and reversals. So I don't think that fundamentally much is changing. I don't think that Trump will back out and basically abandon his entire trade agenda because of the court. And I think that what we see in the US is that courts have been kind of blocking many of the Trump's executive actions. And what he'd done after that, he would go to an appeal, he would go to Supreme Court, and in many cases he prevails.
And he has got other avenues open to him as well. I mean, you know, he could rely on other pieces of legislation potentially. As you say, he's unlikely to change course, isn't he?
No, I don't think so, because I think that when we think about the Trump sort of economic policy, we should think about tariffs are just part of the jigsaw puzzle. So on the one hand, the budget bill, the big, beautiful bill, is now going through the Congress. And what he's thinking is that some of the tax cuts are going to be financed by tariffs. So if the tariff piece falls out, then we really are going to have even worse budget deficit than what it looks on the, at face value. So I don't think he wants to abandon the tariff bit, because for him, it's a revenue opportunity that will finance some of his policy priorities.
What about those countries that are involved in negotiations at the moment? We also think of China, but we think particularly about the European Union. What do they do now? Do they sit back and wait for this to work its way through the court system? Do they take advantage of it? Or do they just carry on as if it hasn't happened?
Well, it certainly weakens Trump's hand, because now there is a lot of uncertainty, because I think what is clear by now that in all likelihood this tariffs thing will make its way all the way to the Supreme Court. What we don't know is what the Supreme Court will rule. And I think this creates a strong incentive for the negotiating partners to kind of drag their feet and see what happens and kind of wait it out. So I think that from the point of view of negotiation tactics, I think it just creates incentive to try to wait and see.
Yeah, really interesting that, isn't it? And I suppose the big question now is, effectively, when you look at what business is going to do, there's just greater uncertainty because they don't know whether these tariffs are going to exist or not in the future, whether Donald Trump will find a way around them, what the negotiators will do. What kills business is uncertainty, isn't it?
Well, certainly it's very hard to make a decision if you don't know what the price will be or what will the demand be. We've seen capex intentions really dropping over the past 4 months. 5 months since this all started. We looked at some of the earnings sort of commentary from some of the largest US companies. Uncertainty is actually flagged as the biggest concern, even more than the recession. So I think at this point, companies are really, they really detest that they cannot really make plans, they cannot make investments, they don't know what would be the price of their products. Many of them have poor guidance. And I think that uncertainty can really kill growth. And the longer this continues, the worse it is. But I think that although we do not know how this whole process will go through the courts, American court system, we don't know what the Supreme Court will rule, But what we do know is that Trump will actually try to pursue tariffs. And what is becoming more clear, like clear and clear, is that 10% seem to be that asymptotic number to which it all is going.
Okay.
Again, there may be some dramatic turn. The Supreme Court may say this is all illegal. But I think if tariffs stay, I think it's probably fairly safe to expect that he will get like 10% more or less across the board. The large number that he came out at the beginning was just a negotiating tactic, but he does really need this revenue, and he will really fight to keep tariffs in place.
Okay, Irene, really appreciate your time today, live there from Florida. Thank you very much indeed from BCA Research.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Now, Elon Musk is leaving his role in the Trump administration. He's been leading the controversial Department of Government Efficiency, tasked with cutting red tape and inefficiency. But the world's richest man has been facing increasing pressure to divert attention back to his actual businesses, such as Tesla, X and SpaceX. Well, let's speak to Dan Ives, Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities. Dan, always a pleasure. This hasn't really come as a surprise, has it? I mean, it's been pretty clear that Elon Musk has been a bit sidelined in recent weeks.
Yeah, look, I mean, me and you've talked about it over the last, few months. I mean, this was a dark chapter that ultimately Musk needed to end. He chose Tesla, and now his days the Trump White House are over. And it removes a black cloud over Tesla's stock. Now it's about the autonomous and AI future, and we could put this sort of dark chapter in the rearview mirror.
And there's been investors, we've spoken to them, some here on Sky News, who've wanted Elon Musk to get back to business, if you like. And that's not a surprise, because it's not just Tesla these days, but lots of other businesses aren't, let's say, firing in all cylinders, if you like.
Yeah, look, I mean, leaders lead. And for Musk, especially when it comes to Tesla, I mean, this is the time in terms of not just turn around China, some of the brand issues in Europe as well as the US, but it's about the autonomous future. Autonomous launches in Austin in June. That's going to be key. And look, we believe this is a $2 trillion market cap. But ultimately, the clock struck midnight. It was time for Musk to get back to business. And that's why I had to put those days and end that Trump White House in the rearview mirror.
Has Doge been a failure? I mean, in many ways it hasn't, in the sense that, if you talk to lots of US agencies, they've seen their funding massively cut, has saved some money. I was listening to a Trump supporter this morning saying that it's shone a light on lots of federal spending that US voters would not be happy with. Has it been a failure or maybe even a success?
I don't think it's been a success. I think it's definitely shined a light, right? I mean, in terms of cockroaches and, and ultimately some of the egregious spending. But I think it also comes down to, from Musk, I'd call it a failure, because this is not what he was supposed to do. And I think the reality is that it was distraction, it was brand issues, and that's why he was really forced to kind of look in the mirror and recognize dealing with the government is a lot dealing than with the typical business. And I think that's what Musk learned in terms of his days in the Beltway.
And what does he do in terms of politics? I mean, the relationship with effectively Donald Trump still seems reasonably strong, but he's had his fingers burnt in the political arena, hasn't he? Do you think he now stays away from politics? Does he continue to donate all that money like he did in the last election to the Republican Party?
Yeah, I think a lot of his days of politics are done. I mean, look, he can still donate. I think he's still going to have a strong relationship with Trump. But I think this definitely, I think this chapter burned a bit. I think he had high expectations, and obviously he saw the brand damage for Tesla. It took on a life of its own. I wouldn't expect Musk to be spending too much time in the Beltway anytime soon.
OK, let's move on to NVIDIA. Still doing pretty well, aren't they? Even despite these restrictions with China, they had a pretty good quarter, haven't they?
I mean, it's the godfather of AI, yet again delivered. I think it just shows the fourth industrial revolution there's only one chip fueling it. It's NVIDIA. And despite the restrictions in China, and obviously that continues to sort of be a roller coaster ride, I mean, they're continuing to dominate. And I think this is just great news for tech as well as the AI revolution thesis.
Yeah, really, it is ultimately fascinating. Just very finally, Dan, before we let you go, we kind of use you as a bit of a bellwether when it comes to understanding the dynamics inside the United States. What's your sense about what's happened with the court ruling regarding tariffs and where Donald Trump might well go next?
Look, in terms of the taco trade and, I think what we've seen with the EU and then 48 hours turn back, and obviously there have been, about 20 sort of backtracks since April 2nd. Look, I think the market is now starting to more and more green out. A lot of this stuff's unrealistic. It's probably get to some sort of 10% baseline tariff, maybe higher in some other ways, but it's the reality and the math that the markets are focused on. And you can't bully the bond market. You can't bully the US dollar.
OK. Dan, always a pleasure there, live for us in New York. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's have a look at how those markets are doing this afternoon. Delighted to say we're joined by Anna McDonald, investment manager at Aubrey Capital Management. And a very good afternoon to you. Now, Dan referred to taco there when he was talking about Donald Trump. That is that Trump always chickens out is the claim that his detractors make. What's your sense of that and the impact? Because the markets have been pretty muted, haven't they, in response to all of this? Because it just adds to the uncertainty. It doesn't solve any of the puzzle, does it?
No, it doesn't solve the puzzles. And you're quite right. The markets had a bit of an initial bounce, and particularly led by some of the exporters, but that has faded as the days gone on. I think that Navarro has come out fighting, saying he can still use other tariffs. We know that the Trump administration have gone to the Court of Appeal asking for them to allow a stay so that the tariff rules will still stay in place whilst this case is litigated. So there's still quite a lot of uncertainty out there, as your previous speakers were saying. So yes, the Trump always chickens out, but maybe also always finds something else that he can try and do and some other kind of lever that he can pull.
Let's talk about GDP figures, though, because actually they're not or have not been quite as bad, the revised figures in the United States, as had been expected. Oh, again, are we kind of underplaying the robustness of the US economy despite all these buffeting winds from the White House?
Well, I don't think you'll find any investors who would completely count the dynamism and the entrepreneurial nature of the US economy out. But I think consumers have been quite cautious. Those GDP numbers show that consumer spending only grew by 1.2%. In the first quarter, and I think that the news about tariffs and potentially rising prices will have delayed some spending decisions, and we know it's delayed what companies can think about doing and where they're investing. So it's still the first contraction has been confirmed that we've seen since COVID. But yes, I think there's still a little bit of caution out there about what the US economy how it might perform over the coming year.
OK, Anna, we want to touch upon another bit of news that's come in the last couple of minutes. That is involving the Ryanair boss, Michael O'Leary. He's qualified for share options worth more than 100 million euros, a hell of a lot of money after the airline's share hit a key performance target. Apparently, it is paving the way for one of the biggest payouts in European corporate history. There is little doubt he is a success and Ryanair is a success, but 100 million euros is quite a lot of money.
Yes, it is quite a lot of money. Ryanair is now Europe's largest airline. However, it's announced a big return of capital to investors at the latest results, and they've talked up a good, strong summer booking season. So I think that yes, it's a lot of money, but he's created a lot of money for shareholders as well. And some would say that they've allowed travel to become much cheaper and more democratized throughout Europe. So it is a big success story.
Yeah, I think it's because the shares have closed up above $21 for the 28th consecutive day, even if 21 euros, and also that he has to stay at the company until July 2028, which I think that is pretty likely, isn't it?
I think he's part of Ryanair. He's part of the whole deal, but he is surrounded by an extremely strong and competent management team as well.
You can imagine that if it wasn't called Ryanair, named after Tony Ryan, it would be definitely called O'Leary Airlines, wouldn't it? Let's just finally end on Auto Trader. It's got lower growth forecasts and its share price is down, I think at one stage, 10% today.
Yeah, it's almost fallen back, lost all its gains for the year. Auto Trader are perversely struggling from a very strong second-hand car market, which means that all the dealers that use Auto Trader don't need to advertise as much because the cars are selling themselves. So that's been quite an interesting side effect. But they did still pass their milestone of over 600 million in revenues, but did still fall short. And analysts are cutting numbers a bit for next year.
OK, Anna, thank you very much. As always, live there from Edinburgh. Thank you.
Thank you.
OK, you're watching Business Live here on Sky News. Coming up next, the Bristol-based developer making aviation history with, yes, it's flying taxis. Stay tuned for that.
Show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away. So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Very welcome back to Business Live. Now, a bit of UK-based innovation. Vertical Aerospace, which is pioneering the development of so-called flying taxis, has carried out its first ever piloted flight in open airspace of a winged electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. The flight over the Cotswolds countryside saw it take off, fly and land like a conventional helicopter, I think it's fair to say, in some regards, even though it looks like an aeroplane. To explain all of this, Stuart Simpson is Chief Executive at Vertical and Aerospace, joins us now. First of all, Stuart, just talk us through what is this flying taxi? It looks like a plane, but it moves like a helicopter.
You got it perfectly, Darren. It will take off and land like a helicopter, but it's electric. So once you've done that, there's a bit of a drain on the battery. So once you're up in the air, the rotors at the front tilt forward, it accelerates up, and it flies like an aircraft on the wing, generating lift. So highly efficient. But you were spot on. Takes off and lands like a helicopter, flies like an aircraft.
And it's exciting, or it has been exciting in the past week, because you've managed to have your first proper test, if you like, flight test, and it went pretty well.
It was incredible. A phenomenal week for the business. First time an aircraft of this kind has flown anywhere in Europe. And we did it in this, in the UK, which is an incredible thing for this company. And we did it in public airspace. And what that means is we got the support of the regulator that this aircraft is safe to fly over the public. So a really momentous day for the company. Very emotional. This is a tough thing to do, to put a new aircraft in the skies. So it was a brilliant day.
And we can see the Union flag there on the bottom. This has been developed, manufactured, and indeed is hopefully potentially going to be in use here in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. Designed in the UK, in Bristol, where our engineering is based. We flew it in the Cotswolds out of Kemble Airport. And the plan is to have our battery facility and our aircraft manufacturing facility in the UK. This prototype was indeed built in Bristol. Phenomenal achievement.
I suppose the big question is, what's the idea with this, though? We're calling it a flying taxi. I mean, it's not going to replace your Uber journey from the pub home anytime soon, I suspect. What makes it a taxi? What are you hoping to do with it?
So there is a huge demand all around the world in the global megacities where urban transport just doesn't work. So this is designed very specifically for into and out of busy cities and intra-city, so within the city, moving around. So initially, the most likely use case one of our customers will sell to is American Airlines. You'll fly into Heathrow, jump on one of these, come into London, for example. But the key for this, the real key of this is mass transport. So the cost per seat per kilometre is around $2, which is equivalent to a black cab. It's equivalent to an Uber Black. So if you look in the medium to long term, absolutely, this is mass transport.
Well, yeah, but the question is, of course, when it comes to effectively the regulation of all of this, I mean, where are they going to be able to fly? I mean, they're not the easiest things to get around. They can't just land in a car park or the backyard or in the middle of the road, can they? So the regulation is going to be quite difficult, isn't it?
So regulation, I think if you go back 5 years ago, people were concerned. Now we've got the Future of Flight Industry Group, which I'm part, chaired by the Minister, Mike Kane. We are committed, and government are committed to getting the regulation in place for 2028. And that's in the UK. And we're seeing the same across the world, whether that's America, Japan, Korea, all across Europe. there is a real need for this. So regulation is evolving at pace. And you mentioned in terms of landing spots, there's already over 360 what we're calling vertiports under construction. We expect 1,200 to be up and running in 2028 when the aircraft is certified.
OK, Stuart, exciting stuff. It does look pretty cool, I'm not going to lie, but we'll have to see whether it works or not in terms of hovering and moving people around. Stuart, really appreciate your time. Stuart Simpson there from Vertical Aerospace. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two little bits of news to bring you. That is that the Dow Jones has turned negative in the last couple of minutes, down 0.2%. Clearly, any bounce back from that court ruling has somewhat dissipated as the uncertainty continues. And you can, of course, follow the markets on the Sky News website. But in terms of business live for me, that is it for the moment. We're back, of course, at 11:30 tomorrow morning. Do join me then if you can. Up next, though, it is the News Hour with Mark Austin, including live coverage from a police press conference that we're expecting in the next couple of minutes from Merseyside Police, where we will find out more details about the incident on Monday in Liverpool. It comes after we found out today that a 9-year-old was the youngest victim injured when that car was driven into crowds at Liverpool's Victory Parade. We will hear from Merseyside Police here on Sky News in the next couple of minutes. Do stay tuned for that with Mark Austin next. And as I say, I will be back tomorrow morning at 11:30. Do join me then if you can.